here. So we could be very casual otherwise, right? But anyway, for those who I don't know, not many of you here, I'm Ian McDonald. I'm the head of the ceramics program, the artist in residence and head of ceramics here at Cranbrook Academy of Art. And of course, we are pleased to welcome Elisabeth Kley here today to listen to her give a talk about her current work and or past work and current work, current projects. Elisabeth currently lives and works in New York, where her work has been written about in numerous publications. You could do some of that research on your own. She'll talk a little bit about that. But she's been in numerous publications, and her work has been described as steadfastly exotic, tantalizing in their imperfection, decorative, yet somehow subversive. Elisabeth has had numerous one- and two-person exhibitions, as well as group exhibitions all around the world. And Elisabeth is currently represented by Canada in New York, Pierre-Marie Giraud in Brussels, Gavlac Gallery in Palm Beach in Los Angeles, and Seasons in Seattle. Elisabeth has been with us for the past few days in the studios, visiting with each and every one of our current ceramic students. And of course, we appreciate all of her unique insights into our work and process. So please help me welcome Elisabeth Kley.
Hello. Is that too loud? Okay, because I tend to mumble. So anyway, I am starting this slideshow with Dalí because of the blurb that was written about my lecture, which was kind of from this thing by Artsy, and it was a little out of date, but since it was there, I wanted to show you kind of where it came from, and it described me as being fascinated by drag. So this began when my father died, and I became interested, because I was always interested in decoration, I became interested in older people trying to stave off death by doing flamboyant appearance, makeup and stuff like that. So, and the Dalí, I had my father had a mustache. It never was like this, but he tended to sometimes sit in a kind of pretentious way that Dalí would do. So I started with Dalí, and I did numerous drawings of Dalí, and here he is. And then I did other people like Warhol and Erte, and then I progressed to become interested in drag. So here's a drawing of Candy Darling, who was a Warhol superstar, and here is a drawing of Ethel Eichelberger, who was another really famous performer in the East Village in the 80s, and dancing at a bar in a dress. So then also the Artsy blurb mentioned that I often make things with eyes on them, and I don't do that so much anymore, but for a while I really liked faces and eyes. So here's a piece from around 2006 or 2004, I'm not sure, with an eye. And so then, like, what I really started the slideshow with was this photograph of all the bottles I made in 2009. And if you can notice, there's a different surface. Like, this was a very quiet glaze. It didn't really do anything with the color. And then I had this other glaze, which is called Tolson, which I got from my glaze chemistry teacher. And you were supposed to put turquoise in it, and I didn't. But it has barium in it, and I can't remember what else in the recipe, but it reacts very strongly with the cobalt and also with the copper carbonate. So I made an underglaze myself, like two of them, the turquoise color, and then I could put that glaze very thickly over the turquoise underglaze that I made, and it would come out very turquoise and drip. And then also this lime color, which I made with the yellow mason stain and a little copper carbonate. So, and also my friend who did drag had, I moved studios before I did all this work. And I had a bunch of work like this, and I had one piece with this kind of bright color. And he said, don't carry all that other stuff over the bridge and under the tunnel. Just bring those, the bright ones. So I didn't throw out everything, but like he wanted me to, but I did listen to him about keep going with this particular surface and color. So anyway, here's another one from that year, like one of those, and it's about this big. It's coil and scrape is how I did it, all those things, coil and scrape. And this is another one, and then this is a watercolor that I did before I did the decoration on the bottle itself. And here's an exhibition I had in Brooklyn, which shows them more spread out, similar work. So also a black and white drawing. So then the next that was all 2009, 2010, and then in 2012, well, wait a minute, let me see. Yeah, I made these, which were for a show in a garden on the Lower East Side. And they're 3 pieces, the bottom, the middle, and the top. They fit into each other because my kiln isn't big enough to make something that's 3 feet tall. So that was the way I got to do something big. So this drawing goes with this one. And then here's a color drawing, and here is another big 3-part one from 2012. And actually, I think a bit before those I had a show in a garden, and I made bird houses and bird cages. So this is a bird cage, and it's also several parts piled up on top of each other and wired together, hanging from a tree. And then this is another one that was too heavy to hang from a tree. And here is a bird bath, 4 pieces. And I made a terracotta, like the bottom had a cylinder that you could dig a hole and put in the dirt. And then it had a stick so it wouldn't blow over in the wind. And this one, a friend of mine bought for me, and I don't know how she broke it, if she left it out, but that's why I'm asking everybody about weatherproofing ceramics, because they didn't last. Here is something from 2013. This is a round one. This is the watercolor that goes with it, and this is the drawing. And the way I would work, and here's another one from the same time, and here is a show I had with that work. So here's a large bird cage that bird house that I didn't finish until after that show. And here is a painting for a sun piece I did. And here are 2 sun pieces. One, I guess I took it out. Okay, so this is all a middle tile and then separate tiles all around the edge, and they got glued to a big piece of wood and hung with whatever it's called, a clamp or something. So anyway, the way that I worked with these was that I always looked at a lot of historical ornamentation, but I spent more time, because I had more time perhaps, transforming it bit by bit. This is 38 inches across. So there would be a long period between the studies that I would do after the things I looked at, and then I would keep playing with it and keep drawing and painting until I had what I wanted. This is the first, when I was doing black and white drawings, people would say to me, well, why don't you do black and white ceramics? And finally, I tried it, and this is one of the first pieces I did, and that was it. That was the end of color. I became fascinated with black and white. And the way I do it also for all of them is it's terracotta with grog, and generally I use this Duncan white underglaze mix powder, and I mix it with underglaze base. And I put 3 coats of that, I'm giving you all the details, on the piece, depending on how big it is. If it's small, I could do it while it's still green. If it's big and I'm afraid I'll break it, I'll fire it once and then I'll do this. Put the paint on. And they're all made with wax resist. I put wax on the white, and then I put the color on everything else. And then the ones that had lines, I will put the wax all over the whole thing and then scratch into the lines and then put the color in there too. The black, what I did to spice it up, it's black underglaze and then one layer and then a layer of cobalt stain and then another layer of black underglaze so that the cobalt reacts in places with the glaze, and I get nice drips and unexpected things. Okay, so this is a print. This is a relief print, and this is a study for the following, like this one, which was more about symbols, because I made these originally for a friend whose partner had died, and he wanted urns for her ashes. He wanted 4 urns, and he was going to put the ashes in the 4 separate urns, and then he was going to take them to the 4 separate directions and put them somewhere, which he never wound up doing. But anyway, she was very into symbols and signs, so I was looking for more simple, less flowery designs. And so that's that one. And then this is about 2014. And this is a print that was a study I made a series of 5 or 6 long and skinny bottles like this. And this one is called Cleopatra R. And here, not that, but they were all, the designs I found were from performances, costumes for Ballets Russes and other things of the same time. So this Cleopatra R was this famous performer around the time of Ballets Russes, which is in the 20s in Paris. I don't know if you know what Ballets Russes was, but it's it was a ballet company founded by Diaghilev, and it was active in Europe, mostly in France, Paris, and in Monte Carlo. And he got a lot of very famous artists, including Picasso, de Chirico, Juan Gris, all kinds of people to do the set designs and the costumes. And he got Stravinsky and other famous composers to do the music. And then he had famously Nijinsky was his dancer and also choreographer, and other people like that. So anyway, I've always been into that time and those costumes and the whole thing, the whole aesthetic of it. So this was Ida Rubinstein as Cleopatra. And then this is a photograph of a movie which was made by, I think it was actually made in Hollywood by a film director, also in the 20s or the 30s. Her name was, and an actress, and her name was Alla Nazimova. And it was a version of Salome that the sets and costumes were designed by Natasha Rambova. And they were a takeoff on Oscar Wilde. So it was, a complete work of art. All the furniture, all the costumes, all the dancing, all meshed together. And that's a fascination of mine. So this particular one, I don't know if you could see that it has this here, and then that at the top. So that's called Salome N for Alla Nazimova. So here's the group of the drawing of the 5 that I did. I did one later for a friend. So there is Cleopatra from the left, Salome, another Salome, Salome K, Salome N, and this was an oddball because it was just tulips, and then this one was Loie Fuller. I don't know if you know, Loie Fuller was a famous dancer, and she, her thing was that she had all these veils, and she would flip the veils in different ways so they would make these amazing shapes. So I thought about the spiral, and that's why I named it after her. So this is like a little side thing that I did of ceramic cages, and this one is about this big, and these others are smaller and thinner. So I made colored ones, and then I made black ones. And it was fun. I mean, it was about, the impetus was this friend of mine who is making work about seed bombs, which are tossed over wire fences into empty lots, and then flowers grow. And he wanted to have a show, and it would be me with birdcage, him with a seed bomb, and his partner with a bird. So that was the impetus for that. And anyway, this is a bunch of scrolls that have some patterns that you may recognize, that I was also just playing with, making patterns hanging on the wall, because I always draw a lot. And here I did a residency in Nikko, Japan, and it was, I told a few of you about it. It was a very beautiful place in a special park in Japan where nearby, like a few minutes away, you could walk and see the historic shrines. So I was finding the ornaments, taking pictures of things in the shrines, and then playing with them to turn them into the designs for bottles. So these are the designs for bottles. These are the pictures of the actual little details that I was into. This is one motif, and then the prints that I made of 4 of them. And then here's some more scrolls, and here's the print again, one of them. And then a color thing that I did when I came back to New York, and one of the actual bottles. And this was just about the last thing I did in color, and it was kind of strange because I hated it. It was so different from the other ones to me. So I went back to black and white and stuck with it. But I don't know if you can see the transformation from this one, the second from the right, and then that same round thing with the radiated lines is here, and here with color, and here. And the color was chosen, like when I paint the watercolors in color, I have this specific set of underglaze colors that I like to use, and so then I'll use them in the watercolors and to get ready for the actual vessels or whatever they are. So then this is from late 2015, early 2016, and this I made for my first show at Canada. And this is a flask. I got into this thing, which also was the case with those sign and symbol ones, that it's kind of a flat-ish shape. So what I would do is put the same design on one side with a black background, and on the other side reversed with black on a white background. And often when I'm drawing these things, I like to twist my head around, and if it's something that's a dark thing with a white background, I will paint the background dark, and that shift is interesting. So anyway, here's the source, which is this Central Asian candelabra tree, like it says, 7th to 9th century. And then here is the original black and white study that I did after it. And then here is the actual final large flask, which was about this big. Let's see, so that's... And here, this is a taken from something that was made in Turkey, but it was Christian. It was for the Christian market. It was an Islamic fabric for the Christian market, and I've always been very interested in cultures that are crossing. You know, like Chinese things as seen by Europeans, or European things as seen by Chinese, and they're often like a fashion in the country to have this quote-unquote exotic thing, you know, in decoration. So this was kind of an example of that, and it's got this cute little angel with 4 wings in each little space. And the fun part of it for me in repeating this motif is that I make a lot of mistakes, and it changes every time I do it. So I do it without hesitation and see what happens. And so this was this study, and then here's the show I did, my first show at Canada. So it has a mixture of these different kinds of work. And this was, as you walked into the gallery, they were all on their pedestals, and they were all white design on black. And then when you turned around and looked the other way, I had that thing painted on the wall, the one that I saw you before, and they were all the opposite, black on white. And then there were 5 or 6 of those prints on the wall in the front room. So then that was one of my first wall paintings. And, you know, it's kind of a similar feeling. It's like I get up there on the ladder, and I have my jar of flash paint, and I dilute it a bit with water, and I just start painting, and I have some little image on my iPhone that I'm working from, and that fact that I'm using this image frees me, and a lot of accidents happen. So this is a wall painting I did in Los Angeles, and it's quite large, and this was the original source that I had on my iPhone as I made 2 trees like that. I mean, you can see this thing here. That's easy to recognize as being, you know, the round one with the dot in the middle. Let's see. So that's that source. And then this is something I did for the textile company Maharam. It's called an artist digital project. And what they do is I made the original, and then they scan them all and turn them into this thing that can be reproduced on this washable material, and the client can order it for whatever particular space that they want. So this was 3 about 40 by 26 long skinny pieces of Asian paper that each one had 3, and I actually couldn't even fit them all on the wall in my studio, so I did the top ones, and then I moved them up and put these underneath, and then I took the top one off and moved this one up and put the bottom layer underneath that, and continued. So, you know, a lot of dripping, and it was fun. Here are a couple more studies from patterns. And here's another wall of later motifs that I also put on flat bottles. And here, this one is from the one, let's see, is that in there? Yeah, it's the one almost in the middle, the 4th from the right. So this is the flask. And this is another one, and I put this to show in progress with the white underglaze, and then I have to draw, because it's a round form, I feel very particular as to how it's spaced on the form, you know, the design. So what I do is I start with 1 layer of white, and I draw it, and I draw it until I get it as right as I can, and then I put another layer of white and draw it again, and then I put the 3rd layer of white and draw it. Maybe this was the 2nd one, and I put the 3rd layer and kind of really lightly pencil it in, because I don't want to be filling in all the spaces. I want it to be open every time I do it. So that's the final one that is also about this big. You know, it's the size that would fit into my kiln in one piece, which is about 26 inches. This is a large wall painting I did on a sheet, And this is the source. I can take different pieces of it and copy them. So that's the source for that. It's an Indian, it's called, both of those tree things were called a palampur. This is from 2017, and then I became interested in South Sea Island, like they're called tapa cloth, and here's one. So I used them for 15 lino cuts, and then also 12 tiles. That was the first thing I made with tiles, which was a pain in the neck, as I have complained to several people about. But I did it. And this is a piece. I got a slab roller also at the end of 2016. So I started using slabs in addition to coils, and I find that quite freeing. So this particular piece is called the fafatai, which is what those, it's also from one of those South Pacific tapa cloths, and it's a stack of 1, 2, 3, 4 pieces that fit into each other, and it's about 2.5 feet tall, maybe. And this is another one. And this is a taller one, a bigger stack. And this is from Wiener Werkstätte motifs, which was a design movement in Vienna, 1910, where they covered everything with patterns, and it was fabulous. So here's a smaller one that I did in 18, and this one is a small one where I had an idea that I would really free things up if I made all the parts as separate tiles and then assembled them together afterwards, so that it would be open as to which ones I would put next to which ones. And, it was a fun idea, but it was also quite difficult to glue them together because everybody warped in a different way, and they didn't fit together easily. So I kind of scrapped that idea for larger pieces. This is a picture of my booth at Independent Art Fair 2018 in March. And this has those pieces that I showed you on the floor. And since they were not too well put together, because I was rushing, and they were all a bit shaky, I didn't want anybody to bump into them. So I made them each a rug, and that would keep people walking outside. And then later on, after the show, I stabilized them all with epoxy paste, and that was like in level. It took quite a while, but I did succeed in doing it. And these are the 3 tile panels that I showed you. I don't know if I showed you these two. Anyway, these were with flowers, another palampur thing. And 2 drawings that I did of Wiener Werkstätte interiors, and another painting on a sheet, and then painting directly on the wall. So that is, and these are my new shape. So I'm still doing, because I like to use up the clay. When you make a slab, there's always all these leftovers, so I need to make some more coiled things. So these are 2, this is an Etruscan theme, and these were from last year, like last fall. And this is a Charles Rennie Mackintosh theme, because I went to Scotland, and he was another designer also around the same time, kind of very related to Saarinen, where they really thought out the entire environment. And this is, I went to see a bunch of, I've always been in love with Roman wall painting. So a friend and I went to the Archaeological Museum in Naples, and we saw all these Roman wall paintings. And this is a 4-tile tile panel of a Roman wall painting. And there's another one. And this is my most recent. And then I had these tiles that were like the largest tiles, and they were quite thick, so they needed to be single pieces. So these are from drawings that I've done of interiors. And this was a Joseph Hoffman on the top left with a Klimt painting, and this is an interior, and this is part of the Villa Stockley, which is in Brussels. I don't know if you all went to Brussels and maybe you drove by it, but it's this fabulous mansion that he built for wealthy clients, and unfortunately you can't get in to see it, but the outside is great. And so that's from a photograph of that. And this is another Wiener Werkstatt interior, and this is I have this book about Samarkand, or Central Asia, and this is a piece of architecture from Central Asia. And then this is a grid of those same small paintings. It's the most recent ones I've done, and I've been using, again, because I was in Rome and in Naples, and I took pictures of a lot of Roman and Etruscan vases, and then I went on the internet and I found more, and these are all things that I picked off of them. So that is it. And what I could say is that I am like wrestling with, this fortunately had no pedestals. I really am tired of pedestals, but I haven't figured out what to replace them with. So that's something I'm wrestling with. And I'm also, for example, I'll share with you some of my doubts. Like this I looked at, and it was great to do, and people loved it, but I felt that the walls were too similar in texture to the ceramics. So I wasn't satisfied with that. And I don't know, even this thing at Independent that I did, at least I think it has more variety. Like the tile panels were placed on painted black areas as well. So I feel that there's more contrast, and your eye can jump around, and that's good, but I would like to make it even better and have it be like, like the Saarinen living room or something like that. Okay, so I guess, yeah, that's it.